You're listening to the Confidence Within podcast. If you are a successful professional entrepreneur who is nonetheless struggling with the fear of public speaking, then you are in the right place. This podcast is all about igniting your inner confidence, learning to show up with genuine authority and brilliance, and becoming the best version of yourself. I'm your host, Victoria Lyazniansky, and welcome to my show. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Confidence Within podcast. My guest today is Courtney Hurley. Courtney is a three-time Olympic épée fencer representing the US in the London Olympics in 2012, the Rio Olympics in 2016, and the Tokyo Olympics in 2021. She received her undergraduate degree from the University of Notre Dame, where she was a two-time NCAA national champion. Coached by her father, Bob Hurley, Courtney has been a member of every US Senior World Championship team since she was 16. Ranked as high as 18th in the world during her young career, Courtney and her older sister, Kelley, made history together when the US women's épée team won bronze at the London Olympics. The first and the only podium finish for women épée fencers at the Olympic Games. The Hurley sisters have competed together on several senior and junior world teams, including the 2008 Junior Worlds, where they led Team USA to gold. Please welcome Courtney to the show. Courtney, thank you so much for being my guest. I'm actually so excited that you're with me on this podcast.
Oh, thank you.
This is quite a personal episode for me because my life has been revolving around fencing for the last 11 years. My son started fencing at 5.5 and he's 16.5 now, and everything has been around fencing. I don't think we've had a proper vacation in years. Everything has been a mini vacation attached to a competition because, as you know, you end up going out of town every 3 weeks between the two kids that I have fencing. So I'm sure you can relate. And let's start with how you got into the sport. It is kind of an obscure niche sport. Not a lot of people know about it. How did you start at fencing?
So yeah, there are a lot of weird stories about how people got into fencing, but mine's a little more traditional. My parents were fencers. That's how they met, is through fencing. And so it was just kind of, we were born into it. My sister and I both, we kind of came out fencing. So yeah, we started fencing very young, same as your son, probably 5, 6 years old, and up until maybe 2 years ago, so 26, 7 years, maybe quite a few years. I like to tell people, all the kids that I am coaching, that I've been fencing longer than they've been born, times probably 2. I know the vacationing around the competitions, that was what we did for many years growing up. We would make we did a lot of ski trips that would revolve around right after a fencing competition or something like that. So it was, yeah, I very much relate to that.
That's literally the only time my kids skied, after Denver and Salt Lake City competitions.
Yes.
And I actually had the pleasure of meeting your parents personally. It was a few years ago. You had a seminar, you and Kelley actually had a seminar for kids before one of the competitions in Austin. And your mom spoke and she told us a lot of stories about you growing up and how they even had something like fencing strips in the backyard where you and your sister could practice. And then they were telling stories of how when you grew up and you would go into all of the international competitions, they would rent an RV in Europe and drive all over Europe in a huge RV and park it right in front of fencing venues.
Yeah, I mean, 25, 6 years of fencing, we definitely have a lot of stories. Our parents were very involved with the fencing, and our dad was our coach growing up. So he's much older, so he was retired and able to travel with us everywhere. And our mom was the manager, the moneymaker, and she because back in the day, fencing competitions, there were so many of them that you had to figure out which ones to go to, and you couldn't just go to all of them. So she really figured out the best situation, best route, she would get the best. And there wasn't Airbnb back in the day either. And so we have a lot of stories of getting rentals and having to get taxis ourselves and having to rent cars and having to travel and all on ourselves. Our dad usually was with us. So yeah, we have a lot of stories, a lot of stories.
And you mentioned your sister Kelley, who is, I believe, 3 years older than you, right?
She's 2.5 years older.
2.5. Okay, so you're really close in age. And I read in one of your interviews when you were, I think, around 12, you started winning over Kelley. And that created a little bit of a sister dynamic there.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly when it was, but definitely when I started beating her, when I was able to get old enough to start to beat her. Yeah, I was really thirsty to beat my older sister. And also we were teenage girls who have, a lot of emotions. So all that in the mix, it was a little bit of a testy environment, but we kind of grew up, especially in college, is I think where we really grew up, and we had a little bit of time apart because she's 2 years ahead of me. So we had a little bit of time apart, which was very crucial. And also I went to the same university, University of Notre Dame. I joined her. So we were on the same team, and we kind of put things aside, and just kind of from then on, we were besties and always on the same team. So.
And I know you went to University of Notre Dame, you mentioned that, and you went there on a full fencing scholarship. And I read somewhere that you studied film,
Correct.
television, and theater. Were you planning to do something with that, or was it just something like a fun hobby for you?
It really started when I was in high school. I worked for fun on my friends were very much into production, making films, and I was an actress for one of their films, and I really, really liked it. And I liked working like as the actress, but also behind the scenes and stuff. That's kind of how it started. But I initially started as business at Notre Dame, but my priority was fencing. So I just I'm not, I'm very much an athlete. A lot of the fencers really focus a lot more on academics, which is understandable, but fencing was like for me and my sister both kind of what we were our main priority. So I switched to something that I thought was fun, but not as demanding as something like business. Ironically, I got my master's in business later on.
And that leads to my next question. Because I am in this world of fencing and my oldest son is 16 and a half, getting close to college, of course, I know that for a lot of kids, the ultimate goal of fencing is to get into a really great college. It's not continue their professional fencing career or get to Olympics. It's really, I want to get into a great school.
School kind of was a second thought, and it was always fencing for me and Kelley, and even our parents. We had no idea really we were just fencing and enjoying it. And then all of a sudden we're like, wow, we can, get scholarships to universities. That's awesome. So most people in fencing, are the opposite, where they are really focused on trying to get into university through fencing. And it's a great sport to do that, especially if you're a female. But yeah, we were kind of the opposite of, we were definitely fencers, and then school was a great bonus, a very, very great bonus. Having full scholarship to University of Notre Dame made it all worth it, because we were definitely paying for so many things for most of our fencing career up until that point. So it was paid back all of our bills essentially. So yeah.
Well, let's talk about Olympics. The first Olympics that you qualified for, which was London Olympics 2012. And both you and your sister qualified for that Olympics, right? So it was kind of a family affair, two Olympians in one family, which is not all that common. And I obviously cannot relate to qualifying for Olympics. I hope one day I will, because my son's goal is to go all the way to Olympics. But I can a little bit relate, because last year he made the US international travel team for his age, for 16-year-olds and under. And it was such a huge event for him. He was over the moon. He got his Team USA jacket. He's been wearing it, I think, nonstop ever since the day he qualified. And it was just the whole being in Europe and fencing for your country and getting gold in teams and standing there with American flag. It was such an amazing experience for him. And I can only imagine how it felt qualifying for London Olympics when you were so young. You were about 22, right?
21.
21.
Yeah.
So talk about London Olympics. Talk about how you felt when you realized you were that close and when you actually qualified.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, my sister qualified for the Beijing Olympics in 2008, the one before, and so how it works is very complicated how it works for qualifying fencing. But essentially, you have one team for each zone. So the Americas you can qualify one team. But then back in the day, so they had every Olympics up until Tokyo, which they got rid of that, thankfully. Every Olympics, 2 team events would be taken out and only have individual. So in Beijing, it was for women's épée, and so only one of us could go. Whereas if there was a team that we could qualify, both my sister and I would have qualified for Beijing Olympics. So for the Beijing Olympics, it was between me and my sister. We were number 1 and number 2. And so that was super heartbreaking for me. And that was before, I was in college. So it was kind of, again, where my sister and I were kind of competitive, and I wasn't so much, besties like we are. We came after college. So it was very hard. But then London, we had a team event, thankfully. But actually, that's a whole other story. Is you have to qualify a team, and then you have to qualify to be on the team, the top 4 people. And so I think it's a whole year process with 8 World Cups and 2 or 3 national tournaments. And for the first World Cup, I got, of the qualifying season, I got top 8. And so now it's not such a big deal, but back then that was a very big deal. And so essentially I qualified for the Olympics after my first World Cup of the year, the first Olympic qualifier. But on the other hand, my sister, who at this point, we had been on the world team since we were 14 years old. Every world championships we had made every year since we were 14 years old. So I was 21 at the time. So we had made every world championship, my sister included. But then all of a sudden, for the London Olympics, qualifying for that team, my sister very much imploded, and all the pressure and everything was it was a lot of pressure, and she struggled under that pressure. And so she didn't qualify until literally the last competition of the entire year, Olympic qualifying process. And so it was a very hard year. Our father, who's much older, that was kind of when he after that, it aged him like 10 years, and he kind of was not able to coach us much more after that because it just was such a hard Olympic qualifier. But it was all worth it. London Olympics was so special because we really had no expectations. We were just so happy that Kelley qualified, that I qualified, and we had never really done that well as a team. We were always what we called the dungeon, because when you lose, you have to keep fencing for like 16, 15, 14 spots. And when you lose, you go to a different building and fence like the rest of the losing matches, loser matches, and we called it the dungeon. And that's where we were kind of comfortable. We were like always in the dungeon. But then all of a sudden we had no expectations in London. We were just so happy to be there. And when you have that kind of mindset at the Olympics, it can really change things. That's why a lot of people who weren't supposed to go, who qualified from some weird reason, they end up doing the best because they're just happy to be there. So it can really change the mindset. And so London, that was definitely the mindset for us. We were just happy to be there. And Kelley was the alternate, the 4th. And when they substituted her in for the match, like that was all we really wanted, because if you're not substituted in, then you're not officially an Olympian. Another crazy rule. So again, we were just happy, but then that kind of mindset helped us win the bronze. We were just so happy and everything was great. And that was kind of, I think, what pushed us. Whereas we were fencing the Russians for bronze, where they had all the pressure, all the, responsibility of, because Russia is really good at fencing and they're supposed to beat us. They were supposed to beat us for sure. But that mindset changed, I think, the whole match. And so we were able to win the bronze. And so it was such an amazing experience. I can still feel like it was yesterday, even though it was, how long ago? It's 2023 now. So 12 years ago, whatever.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that very much a historical occasion that you got a bronze? Because until then, no American women's team in épée got a medal in Olympics.
Yes, no U.S. women's ever. That's the first and still the last. So that's the still very historical women's épée. That's the only medal that has ever been team and individual.
Congratulations. That is actually truly quite an achievement, because there are so many world teams that are so good. And this leads me to this conversation of the kind of how American fencing is more of an amateur sport, where in a lot of other countries, it's more of a professional sport, where the athletes who make it that high, who are on a national team or who are close to a national team, they can pretty much get paid, they can live normal, comfortable life and continue training. Whereas the US athletes, US fencers specifically, it's all self-funded pretty much. Other than when you make the national or Olympic team, your travel is paid. But other than that, it's completely self and parents funded. How do you feel about that? I know you must have had tons of conversations with European fencers about this.
I mean, you've watched the TEDx talk, which I very much cover about money, how much Olympians don't make. And that's a big reason why we were talking earlier about fencers who don't continue after college. Their goal is college and then done, because there's no support. There's hardly any support. There's more and more support coming, but it's still not able to live off of fencing, especially if you're not in top, whatever in the US, there's nothing. And that's one of the big reasons after the Tokyo Olympics that I kind of took a step back, and I'm, contemplating retirement. I'm half retired, I would say, right now. Just so tired of not making money and devoting so much time and everything to this sport and just not getting money from it. It's very difficult. And that's why most people quit after university.
It is so sad. And I had this conversation when my son fenced in Europe. I actually spoke on a few occasions with some of the athletes and coaches and their parents. And they just couldn't believe that our kids quit after college. They're like, well, you get to college and then why don't you continue fencing? They just don't even comprehend that for you to continue fencing, you literally have to choose, am I going to make money and make a living and maybe have a family and support my family? Or am I going to just train and rely on pretty much whatever little side jobs I can get, because you have to train full time or, rely on family. And it's just impossible for European fencers to comprehend the situation because it's just so different from their reality. And you're right, that's why a lot of fencers here, even those who are really, truly interested in going all the way to the Olympics and continue training, they try to make that happen with working full-time and training in the evenings, and it's almost impossible.
Yeah, Europeans, they definitely don't understand. I mean, there's positives and negatives, definitely, to the Europeans, where they all have to like live in the same area and train in the same facility, and that is their job. So there's positive and negatives, but definitely the big negative is for us is the no money, no support. And when you're young, you don't, and you have your parents, but fortunately for us, we have our family supporting us, because that's why it's so difficult for a lot of people to get into fencing, because it's so expensive and they can't afford it. But thankfully for us, we've had that. That's a big reason why we were so successful, is that we had our family supporting us all the way through. But definitely put us in debt for many years. But even if you have that support, it's so difficult to, essentially it's your unpaid, for me, it feels like unpaid work. When you're young, you don't think that, because you love it and you're having fun, and it's, you don't really think about things like that, which was very much the case for us. I was not, for most of my years, I was just not thinking about it at all. But it just is so exhausting now to me to put all that effort. And even if I don't necessarily need the money, like I'm very, very fortunate and privileged, and that my family is supporting me, it feels like unpaid work almost at this point.
Yeah.
To do it. And I do love the sport, and I'm in the process right now of I'm coaching now, and so I'm making money with that, and it's definitely helped my relationship with the sport, and not put so much pressure on the sport itself, because that's also another aspect of the sport. It's a lot of pressure, a lot of losing, a lot of emotions, and right now I'm in that process of enjoying the sport again, and it's actually really nice. and I'm considering on coming back. But again, there's that huge hurdle of not making money that I haven't really, and coaching I do enjoy coaching and helping and everything, but to me, it seems difficult to do both the coaching and the competing. That's something I'm trying to figure out right now. I'm in the process of trying to figure out how to juggle both. But yeah, it's very difficult to juggle both working and fencing.
Yeah. And it's definitely not anything like football or baseball, where if you make it to the top of the sport like you did, you're literally at the top of the sport. And people outside of fencing may not know your name, but for those who are in the fencing community, you're a legend. I mean, you've been to 3 Olympics, you've been to, I don't even know how many world events, and you've been on a national team for a decade or over a decade, right? It's been, you are at the very top of the sport, and there is no comparison in how you are compensated compared to some of the biggest sports, basketball, football, baseball, and so on.
I said that many times. If I was getting paid like the basketball, I would 100% still be fencing, and I would probably fence the rest until I was too old to like walk anymore. If I was paid like them, whew,
oh, yeah. You would be fencing until you're 90, because not a lot of people know it, but you can fence until you're literally able to hold a sword, because there are events, including world events, for veterans. Anybody above 40 qualifies within their age bracket, and you can go to world championships until you are literally 100 years old.
Yes, I would. If I was paid like that, I would.
What about sponsorships? You would think, right? For anybody outside of fencing, somebody went to 3 Olympics, got an Olympic bronze medal, which is the only medals that American women got in épée. It's a huge deal. Have you seen any sponsorships, or has anything changed after those Olympics?
You have this dream of the Olympics. You have this, like, if you win the medal, like something's going to change, like it's going to be, but for most majority of Olympians, especially, and even Olympians that win medals, nothing changes. Physically, nothing changes. You don't necessarily get sponsorships running to you. You don't get the sponsorship deals. You don't get, some crazy recognition or anything. So after the Olympics, there was nothing changed for us except, being happy and mentally, emotionally being very happy. Fencing is getting more and more popular, but even back then it's not a very popular sport. No, many people watch it. It's not very televised. Still now it's a little more organized, but it was so difficult for our parents to even watch us compete, because how difficult it is to find live streaming, how difficult it is to find anything on the competition. It's so yeah, we've gotten a few sponsorships over the years, but 99% of the sponsorships have been paid with product. So we only get paid with the product. We never got paid with money. And, we tried over the years. We've hired managers, we've hired social media. And that's the other thing with this kind of sport, is that if you want to make money, you have to work for those sponsorships. You have to essentially do more unpaid work with social media, which is, you don't think about it. It is work. It's very much work, especially if you don't necessarily come easily to it. Like, I don't think it doesn't come easy to me to do social media. And so doing more unpaid work, and you don't even get the guarantee of getting anything back from that, which is what happened to us. We tried for so many years to try to get the sponsorships, try to up our numbers on social media and to get more views, but it was just so difficult. We had so many heartbreaks. People don't know that. They just like guess. They just think that we just have sponsorships, and that's just athletes get paid. But people don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the identity of an Olympic fencer, because identity of Olympic fencer is not just, as you said, all glory and happiness. There is a lot of defeat that comes into play. There is a lot of mental health issues that come into play that not a lot of people talk about. Can you talk about what it means for you to have this identity of an Olympic fencer?
It's definitely something I thought about in more recent years, because I've contemplating retirement, especially during the Tokyo Olympics for the pandemic. That was something that, nobody our age has ever dealt with, that kind of situation of the pandemic, and mixing in the pandemic with trying to train as an athlete. And it opened up the eyes for a lot of people, that the COVID situation, it kind of put everything in perspective. It kind of, you're just trying to live and trying to be happy, and then you're on top of that, you have to work and train as an athlete is very difficult environment. Thankfully in Houston, we weren't really shut down that long whenever the pandemic happened, but most people, everything was shut down for so long, and then you're still expected to compete and be a high level athlete at the Olympics. It really put everything in perspective, especially for me. It put things in perspective, and it just brought out a lot of emotions, things I didn't really think about. Before that, I was just on a one track mind. That's what I was saying. When you're young, you're just on a one track mind. You don't really think about other things. And I was definitely on that verge of thinking of everything, but the pandemic definitely, I think, solidified the idea of the mental health. And am I happy? Why am I doing this? There's so many other factors to life. There's so many things going on. And so that's why I think Tokyo Olympics it definitely opened the eyes for a lot of people about mental health and athletes, but it's still something that's not really thought about or talked about too much. Simone Biles was somebody at the Olympics who, but it's kind of, yes, it's important for everybody to talk about it, but then she, still competed and won the bronze. Like, it was like, okay, the 99% of the athletes out here aren't winning anything or ever going to win anything. And that's something that's definitely not talked about. You only hear from like Michael Phelps, who's very much advocate of mental health. And it's like, yes, it's very, everyone has the ability to talk about it and think about it. And it's very important to speak up about it. But what's the hardest thing is for athletes who don't get recognition, who don't win things, who are there grinding away all their life and don't ever, win an Olympic medal, don't ever get close to making the Olympics. And you still you're still training as much as the other athletes. You're still putting in the work as much as the other athletes. It's very difficult, I think. And you have to truly enjoy and love what you do. And even then, when you don't make money for so many years, and there's so many aspects, and because you feel you're alone, you don't feel that anybody is relating or anybody is understanding. And so it's really important to talk about it all, not everything.
Right. And I think there's also this aspect of, who am I if I don't win? Because you are growing up an athlete. That's your identity. I am an athlete. I am supposed to do this. I'm supposed to win. And especially when you're at a high level, when you're at an Olympic level, and then you don't get a medal, it probably messes with your head quite a lot. Who am I then? And I think there are a lot of parallels here with the regular corporate world, right? It's exactly the same thing. It's really not that far removed. A lot of people your age, really, probably your people you went to college with, they're probably going through a very similar thing in the corporate world, where things don't go their way, or they realize they're not where they're supposed to be, and they have the whole identity wrapped up into their job, and something doesn't go right. It becomes, who am I really? Because my identity is who I thought I was, but now I can see that I'm actually separate from my identity. I'm not only an Olympic fencer, I'm a human being. I'm not only great at this corporate job, I'm also a human being. And I think it's very, very similar in terms of the emotions that people go through as they progress through life. You've had such an amazing journey with so many ups and downs, obviously, but so many ups. You've traveled all over the world. You've traveled all the time. You've had so many amazing experiences. And when you look at your peers who did, let's say, graduate from Notre Dame and went on in the corporate world, stopped fencing, and just went on and got jobs, do you have any regrets not choosing that path?
No.
I knew you were going to say that. Don't you feel that you're doing exactly what you're meant to do?
Yeah, I feel that my path, I'm on a natural path right now, that I'm even in figuring out, like, I'm having all these thoughts about what I want to do, if it's still compete or if I want to coach. I think this process is still the natural pathway to what I'm supposed to be doing. So yeah, I definitely don't have regrets at all. I would much rather be this than something else that I'm not fulfilled in, or maybe I'd have more money, but
But what about the future? Let's talk about the future. What do you think you're going to do? I mean, I saw you in the club yesterday, so you're clearly training. Do you think you have it in you to try and train for another Olympics?
So that's my internally, because I'm coaching a lot now. I'm trying to learn. That's another thing I'm trying. When I first started coaching, which was not that long ago, only last year, I thought, oh, like I can coach. And it is very easy for me in a certain aspect because I know fencing inside and out and everything. But I'm learning now that being a coach is different. I definitely think I have a lot more to offer than like a lot of coaches because of my experience and everything like that. But still being a coach is different. And so now I'm in the process, I feel, of learning to be a coach. And it's kind of exciting because it's something, new. Even though it's not new, it's new. But in the meantime, while I'm doing this, I'm starting to enjoy the sport again. It's really helped me enjoy it and put in perspective again, everything. And I'm definitely not doing Paris, which is next year, Paris 2024. And I've really enjoyed this time off. And it doesn't necessarily, I could still never go back to fencing, and I think it would be fine. Everything will be fine. Obviously, life will move on. But there's still this internal that I know that I am still a great fencer, and I could still be one of the best. And the thing that probably ties it in is that the next Olympics is in LA 2028. And that would be really fun.
I was just gonna say,
in the US. If it was somewhere else, I think it would be really hard for me to try to go back for the Olympics. But the fact that it's in LA, that would be really fun. I'm not sure if it's possible for me to coach kind of and fence at the same time. I'm not sure if that's a totally normal thing, or I'm thinking about it, but there's definitely other aspects, again, like not making any money. It's hard. It's very hard to do that, to train as much as you need to train and not make any money. So it's very hard. So I'm not totally disregarding it, but I think some things have to happen in order for it to happen. And so it might happen. And I think it would inspire kids. And that's also I really like helping and inspiring people. And I think, I want to do it for myself, but also that idea of it's really inspiring. I think if I were to come back and I would be for the LA Olympics, I'd be 38. So.
And the truth is that it's not only going to be, as you said, inspirational for others, inspirational for the kids, but it will also bring so much more attention to fencing, hopefully, because it would be wonderful if fencing was a lot bigger sport in the United States. And I think Fencing Federation is doing some steps towards that, trying to make it a lot more available and inclusive. And hopefully one day fencing will be a lot more like basketball and football, where all the kids can just
swear,
go
the day I retire, they're going to be like, oh, we're going to pay our athletes now. I swear. That's what's going to happen.
Well, Courtney, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you coming to my podcast. And thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing so many stories. And I wish you so much success.
Thank you so much.
I hope we're going to see you at LA Olympics.
Yes. Yeah, that would be cool. Thank you for having me. And it was really fun.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Courtney. She's truly an inspiration, and I hope you learned something new about the world of fencing as well. And if you're someone who struggles with the fear of public speaking and wants to learn how to become a confident, compelling, and captivating speaker, make sure to grab my free mini course at www.conqueryourfearminicourse.com. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I'll talk to you next Wednesday. Bye for now.